Ready?
Yep.
What's going on and welcome back. This is Kicking It with Zac Holcomb, the podcast. We're on episode 48. Sorry for the long hiatus, but today we've got Jeff Laws.
Hey, how are you doing?
Figured we'd come back with a splash, you know?
All right.
Hometown guy, ready to rock.
Yeah.
So anywho, if you're brand new to the show, sorry about that, but we just took about 6 weeks off. I was moving and doing a bunch of crazy other things, and we had barbecue festival, and just didn't do it for about 6 weeks. But now we're back, ready to rock. Got a whole little spring. It was like we took a little break for a season, you know what I mean?
True.
We'll call it that.
Yeah.
48 episodes.
Season 2, episode 1.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll have to do it like that. Anywho, well, thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. I know we bumped into each other at the Go Eco ribbon cutting many times before that, we were talking about some podcast that had been put out about that time, and I was like, man, we got to get you on. You were like, I don't know about that.
Oh, yeah.
And then and a couple of weeks went by, and you were like, hey, I've been thinking about that thing. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Yeah. So appreciate that. Appreciate it. Wore on you a little bit, you know.
All right.
I like that. Well, man, you're what the show is largely about. If you haven't watched it, is we're shining a positive light on all things in the Kinston area because, you know, why not? So we're trying to drown out some of the negativity by producing a lot of positivity. So that's the whole point of the show. And it's kind of a cool way to kind of highlight some of the cool people and dogs of the area. Got the dogs here now, too. So it's a whole new part of the show. So, anywho, man, I wanted to have you on. You're born, raised, continue.
Yeah.
Always here, loving it.
I was here, except for a few years at ECU.
Yeah, little college
Always
stuff.
been here, yeah.
That's cool. So what would you did some of the fun things growing up. You said that you were one of the later classes of the Granger High School.
That's pretty interesting.
How does that?
Well, back when I was coming up through school, Northwest was K through 3. Bynum Elementary was 4th through 5th, and Rochelle was 6th and 7th. So 8th and 9th grade was the old Granger High School, which was Kinston Junior High. Okay. And so Kinston High started building the new 9th grade, I guess probably while I was in the 7th grade, and Rochelle started building the 8th grade in about the same time. So I was the last class to actually go to the old Granger High School as Kinston Junior High my 8th grade year, and then 9th grade I started as the first class of the 9th grade at Kinston High School. So that was kind of cool. Just a little.
That is interesting. So you got to kind of go through both buildings and be like the last of one and the first.
Yep,
of the other. That is
the last of one and the first of another. Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
And it was also cool because the grade above me. So when I was in the 8th grade, the 9th graders that were at Kinston Junior High together, we went to Kinston High together. So it was kind of cool to travel with the whole class that you were with.
Yeah, that's neat. You don't have like that drop off year. Yeah, that is kind of like a pain. Like we had like the town that we lived in was the same way. They had like a 7th and 8th grade school that was like the junior high. Then they had a 5th and 6th grade school that was like the middle school or whatever. I didn't go to any of those schools. I just dropped in and started going to public high school like in 9th grade. But my 9th grade year was the last year before they split the schools in the district.
Gotcha.
So we had I think we had 780 something freshmen.
Wow.
And then they split the schools, and then I was like my sophomore, senior year was like with the school split.
Right. So. Yeah. Well, we probably had 350, 360 in our class all through school. That's pretty big class.
Yeah, especially for around here.
Yeah.
That is big. How many high schools did they have? All 3 schools at the time, right?
There was.
Has that always been a thing?
Yes.
They've always had those 3 high schools.
So back then, Kinston City Schools was different than Lenoir County Public Schools. Okay. So I think it was several years after I graduated that they merged the school system. So we were Kinston High School. We were the city people. Mm-hmm. And then North Lenoir and South Lenoir were part of Lenoir County Schools, which had a completely different management,
their
teachers,
administration, and all that.
Yep.
I got you. That's interesting. Very cool. I always wondered what it would be like. And this is just, I don't have any history with any of the high schools here or anything, but like, man, how interesting it would be if there was one high school for the whole county from an athletic perspective.
Yeah, true.
It'd be kind of wild.
Yeah, it would be a big school.
Because like each school's kind of got its own. Yeah, it'd be a big school, and it like logistically it would be a nightmare.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
But it's just kind of interesting to think about. I don't know. It's kind of cool. That's gonna be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, what kind of fun things did you do growing up, man? I know you mentioned that growing up you thought maybe you're gonna try and be a professional skateboarder.
Yeah, I did mention that. Yeah. So So I was probably somewhere in my, I don't know, probably 10, 11, 12-year-old self. I got into skateboarding. It was back when I guess that was kind of an up-and-coming thing. I remember like people like Tony Hawk were just getting their start back then. So I can't remember exactly how I got into it, probably other than friends doing it. But Burt's Surf Shop used to be down here on Queen Street. It's actually where part of the O'Neill is now.
Oh, okay.
So Burt's Surf Shop, they were a surf shop, but they started carrying skateboard parts. And there was also a bike shop on Vernon, where Papa John's is now.
Okay, yeah.
And so they sold skateboard decks and trucks and wheels and, all the things to put together a skateboard. Back then we called them a fat skateboard. And okay. So, I got into buying decks and wheels and, putting my own grip tape designs on. And, I lived over here in Northwest Kinston. So I had a lot of friends my same age that were, in a close proximity. So we would skate a lot. And my grandmother, who lived pretty close to my parents' house, she let me build a half pipe in the backyard.
Yes,
so,
let's go.
So for about 4 or 5 years, I had this big half pipe in my grandma's backyard, and most of my friends would come over and we'd skate it and do all kinds of crazy stuff. Nobody ever really got hurt, but
nothing major.
But even when I guess I was into it all through up until probably about the time I was going to turn 16. When I went to school in junior high from Granger, my parents actually let me ride my skateboard to school and back several times.
Just cutting across Highland?
With friends.
Yeah. Was Highland nice and smooth like it is now?
So Highland...
That's a good one-wheel road, just so you know.
It was a lot of sidewalks, and we'd ride on the sidewalks. So, I lived up Highland, and we would ride up Highland, cross Heritage, just continue on Highland and turn down maybe Independence or something and be right there at school.
Or Park.
Yeah, one of those 3 streets and be right there at school. So that was, I can say I used to skateboard to school.
I like that. Was that the, you said like a fat board. Is that the one that's kind of got that
shape?
It was,
just a wide. So back then, I think before skateboarding was a real thing around here, skateboards were narrow. And I've seen a lot now that are back narrow or narrower than we had. So it was the Vision, Powell Peralta, brands like that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Have you been over to the skate shop?
I haven't. I've seen it online.
Rekindled that flame?
I haven't yet. I probably don't need to rekindle that one.
They're out there shooting a video today down in South Queen.
I have a lot of scars on my knees from back then. I probably don't need any more.
I'm working on a pretty nasty scar on my leg from kickball a couple weeks ago still. So
right.
I feel you on that. Yeah, that's the one wheel riding for us is it's very you respect the board, you know.
Yeah,
You know
I've never ridden one, but I've seen videos and read about them. About that, there's this point of no return on them or something where you lean forward and it goes faster. You lean forward, it goes faster, and any further forward is not going faster.
Free go. Yeah, so it's called pushback.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a little bit of nerd stuff, but on the one wheel, it's all like a gyro or whatever. So as you lean forward, you'll go so far, and then once it hits, it's deemed in the software of it that like 14.5 miles an hour. It'll like raise the front end of the board a little bit while you're riding. And so you feel it, and it's called pushing back, pushback. And it's to let you know that like that is the preset limit for the motor and what it thinks that it can do. Like if you're leaning and based on what you weigh and hitting a bump or something, it can safely keep you up right there.
Right.
You can push through pushback if you so choose. And if you ever see someone laying on the ground like doing this next to a one wheel, they have pushed through pushback more than likely. So it's pretty terrible.
I've read about that.
It's horrible, man. We've done that. We when we first got the board, like day 1 you're like on the grass, day 2 you're kind of on the grass, feeling yourself a little. Day 3 you're like maybe on a sidewalk or in the driveway. Well, like day 5 we were out at Outer Banks. We were like out on the horse beaches hanging out. Just moved here from Ohio. I'm like, life is amazing. This is great. Feeling myself on the board. So I'm kind of having some long weekends, and I'm riding. Like, this is fantastic. Low tide, going around. Well, as I'm drinking beer and riding, I'm becoming more capable in my mind. My confidence level soaring. The battery level of the board is dropping. So it's like this inverse effect where you're feeling it and the board is not feeling it.
Where does this one meet this one?
Yeah, and so it met for me at there's an app, and I rode it down the slope towards like the water, and I looked down, it said I went 19.6 miles an hour, and I was like, went past the pushback, but I wasn't nothing bad could happen, right? I was like, I'm pretty sure I can get 20. So I went back around, leaned forward into it, and then poof, just like sat up, and I'm like laying in the sand. I'm like, what just happened? Look back. There's perfect untouched sand for about 13 feet from me to the board. So, and the board just like kind of planted in the sand. So we had reached the limit. It said 24 point something.
Wow. Was that downhill?
Yeah, it was going downhill on like all the way out low tide.
So it must do that pushback based on motor torque and not speed.
No, so it did. I just pushed right on through it. But like, so if I weighed more, I wouldn't have gotten to those speeds, right? Because it would have fallen and failed a little earlier. But it's so funny on like some of the forums, because people be like, "Oh, why don't they just make it not push back and not fall?" And it's like, it's mechanical limits, you knucklehead. Like it's kind of like physics. But anyway, nerd stuff. But yeah, ate it really hard on that. Now I respect the board. Go slow. I've only wiped out like 2 or 3 times since then. But I was like seriously laid up for a good 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's not bad. But yeah, skateboarding was fun. Heck, before that, I used to break dance. I mean, that was rap music was coming out in
with
the
mid-80s.
Yeah, we would friends of mine. We would all along Sutton Avenue.
Really?
We would take cardboard and sit it on the sidewalk with our boom boxes, and
I love that.
We weren't good, but we would break dance.
You looked good. So. You felt good.
It was.
Who was the best out of like your crew? Like who was the best break dancer?
A guy named William Sabston. His parents lived in the house. I'm not sure if you know where. It's where William Wilder's sister lives now. Curtis Nairn. It's right around the curve from where you grew. From where you used to live.
I got you.
Yeah. But he was pretty good. He was small. He could do like a head spin and stuff.
He get going. Yeah. Not a lot of weight stopping him. Who was the best skateboarder?
Out of the crew that I hung out with in my neighborhood, I was probably pretty good. But there was this other group over in West Haven area of Kinston. These guys were older than me. A guy named Barry Oakes. I think he was 3 or 4 years older than me. So when I was doing this in middle school, early junior high school, he was in high school, and those guys like we would sometimes go and watch them skate, and we couldn't touch them. So.
Yeah, they were like the next grade up.
Like. Yeah, it was like us, and then it was like them, and then it was like Tony Hawk.
Right. It's like you're at the baseball diamond, and that's like the U12 team, and you're the U10 guys, and you're like, man, they're so big.
Yeah, it was fun.
That one dude's got chest hair.
Look, we didn't have to be good to have fun.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's sweet. Did you entrepreneurial spirit? Were you into flipping? Were you building skateboards and selling them?
No,
were you doing any of that at that point in time?
I wasn't really doing that much. But I was doing that more with cars when I got into drag racing. And talk about that.
That's good.
Yeah.
But so you skate. I mean, like most kids, you're skateboarding until then you get the wheels, and you're like, all right.
Yeah. Well, it was more of like collecting different parts to like change out stuff on your own board.
Right.
Stuff. Yeah. It's like going to Bert's in the bicycle shop and like looking in the glass cases at the stuff that you're like saving your allowance up for. I'm gonna get those wheels. I'm gonna get those blue wheels. I'm gonna get that next. So, it was fun.
Yeah. It's like it works on. Especially works on males, the whole display it and let us come back when we get our nickels together.
Cutting grass. Saving up allowance.
Right. Is that what you did? You had a little landscape hustle?
Well, I would cut my parents' grass, and they'd pay me for doing a little bit of yard work. They used to have this great big magnolia tree, and it would drop leaves, of course, like they do. And my dad used to pay me a penny a piece to pick up the leaves.
Penny a leaf?
A penny a leaf. So I'd go out there and pick up the leaves and count them as I'm putting them in this plastic trash can and be like, all right, I got 210 leaves, $2.10.
That's awesome.
I mean, in the late 70s, early 80s, that was pretty good.
What was a wheel for a skateboard at that point? About $1?
I really don't remember. I bet they were still probably $20 a set.
Yeah.
I would think that. Yeah, I remember
on your way.
Trucks. We would break trucks sometimes, and they were. If you broke a truck, that was about a $30 to $40 expense. Yeah, that could be devastating to your hobby.
That can ruin a 30 or something real fast. Yeah.
Yep.
That is funny. All right, what do you got on the? You got car stereos. Were you you the guy putting stereos in?
So when I turned, I think I was still 15. Somehow it just sparked my interest, the whole car stereo scene. And the minute I turned 16, I think the summer before I turned 16, I bought my first CD player, but that was for like the house stereo. Mm-hmm. And so that whole year waiting to be 16, I was starting to buy CDs at the sound shop. People from here will remember that. And so by the time I was about to turn 16, I was starting to save up for my first like car stereo stuff. So I was starting to kind of buy car stereo stuff before I turned 16. Mm-hmm. And so I got my first car, it was Honda Accord. And within a week or two, I had stereo, and I think I was the second person at Kinston High School to have subwoofers in the trunk. Eric Rouse was the first. He was a grade older than me, so he had a little jump start on me. Yeah. And the funny thing is, he was a customer of Stereo Concepts, which was a store that's it's across from the mall on Hardy Road, where the friend of mine that I got into it with, Alton Joyner, he has a store there now. But I was teamed up with Alton, and we had a car stereo store behind the car wash on Vernon Avenue, across from where the old Blockbuster was, which is a gym now. Mm-hmm. So Eric was a customer of Stereo Concepts, and they had Rockford Fosgate equipment that they pushed, and then we had Orion and a couple of other brands. So I just remember the first year that I had my driver's license, Eric and I were the only ones with subwoofers in our car, and he had Rockford Fosgate, I had Orion, so we were, we little rivalry there. But
right. What kind of car was his?
He had a Maxima. He had a Nissan Maxima.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dang. And guys are rocking the Japanese sedan life.
Yeah.
Like the pass me down.
Yeah, I wanted a Mustang GT when I turned 16,
dude,
but
I did too.
My parents weren't going to buy that for me.
No, my best friend freaking got one though. I was so pissed. I was like, God, yeah, it was awesome. I got to ride around.
So I did the car stereo thing all through high school. Did a lot of installations for my friends. Started working for Alton. Hadn't started his own store yet. He was doing installations for Guy Stocks, who had a store called Sounds Unlimited on Vernon. It's where there's a tax place there now, across from the car wash on the side on Vernon Avenue.
Okay, yeah.
So Alton was doing installations for him, and I started working after school doing that. And so summers, that's what I would do. Anytime I could after school, I would do that. By the time that I was graduating high school, he was starting his own store, and that was behind the car wash in the bays that we used to use for the installations for Sounds Unlimited. Mm-hmm. And so even my first year in college, I would come back on weekdays or weekends sometimes and do I was doing a lot of factory tape deck repairs. Gotcha. So back then, especially the GM cassette decks in the current vehicles of that time, the belts in them they were like rubber bands. Man, they would just deteriorate. So you'd get a tape that would they would auto flip sides. Mm-hmm. So you'd put a tape in there, it would work fine one day. The next day, it would just sit there and flip sides, side to side, and not play. So anyway, there was 3 belts in there that you could replace, and it would fix that. So I kind of had this little niche market around here where, it's either that or buy, $300 or $400 radio. So I was at ECU in Greenville, and there was a store over there, Todd Stereo, that sold parts. So I would go by there, get the parts, and I would just keep a supply of these belts and stuff for mostly GM, but other brands too. And so I'd come back if he had something during the week, they'd pull the radio out. I'd come back and repair it and make. So I think we were charging it was like $80 to do that. And so I'd split that with Alton. So I was all into that. We were, I did a few kind of I guess what you consider show cars. When I was into that, I had my Honda Accord. I had it all decked out, the whole trunk, subwoofers, plexiglass, neon, CD changers in the trunk.
Oh, yeah.
And this would have been in 91, 92.
Yeah, so it's like a little angle back.
Yeah, and this was a sedan. So yeah, it wasn't a hatchback; it was a sedan. So the whole trunk was like. In fact, I had it where the back seat cushion. It didn't fold down in those, but you could pop it off for show purposes and see the subwoofers and stuff.
I like that.
So after that, I had a Ford Tempo that I bought, and that was really just mostly a show car. We lowered it, put 5-star wheels on it. And it had great big stereo banners all over it and stuff. We took that to a couple of shows, South Carolina, places like that. But yeah, so that was a little fun thing.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And so then I got into, I said I always wanted a Mustang GT. My parents wouldn't buy me that. So as soon as I got to where I could do something myself, I bought a 1984 Mustang with no engine in it. And so I spent probably about 4 or 5 months I had a friend of mine who was he was service manager of Win Odom Ford and LaGrange, Billy Stallings. He said, "Man, I got an old 302 engine out of a truck in my backyard. If you want it, I mean, it's pretty bad shape, but if you want it, you can have it." So I got that, and I basically built my Mustang GT finally.
I like that.
So that was the first of, I think, 13 Mustangs that I owned.
Oh, geez.
So I got into drag racing when I got into the Mustang stuff. Going out to Kinston drag strip, really just. Nothing super competitive. We'd go out there and test and tune nights, which were usually Thursday nights, and run. And so that was also a time where there was an up-and-coming thing where Mustangs and, fast cars were kind of hitting eastern North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I act like it was the newest thing every time I got into something, but I think it was probably when it was starting to hit, eastern North Carolina.
Right.
So I was at at ECU, and when I went to college, I wanted to be. I was already into computers, so even in high school, I had a Commodore 64. My senior year, I got hooked up with a friend that got me into amateur radio, ham radio. Mm. So I got my ham radio license. So I was really into that stuff. Building antennas, building radio amplifiers, and all this kind of stuff. So the friend, his dad was into computers. And so he helped me build a first PC. So by the time I graduated high school, I was into car stereo. I was getting into ham radio. I built my first PC. Go to ECU, move into my dorm. I'm the only guy so it was a co-ed dorm. So our hall was all guys. The one below us was all girls. And I was the only one on our whole floor that had a PC in our dorm room.
Right.
So a lot of the classes, even if you weren't taking computer classes, a lot of them had what required computer lab work. Mm. So I could dial into the campus modem bank and do work just like if you had to go to the computer lab and do it.
Right.
So my first year at ECU, I had people bringing me all kinds of little goodies to come to my room and do their schoolwork instead of having to go to the computer lab. Not saying it was beer and all that, but could have been. So anyway, I forgot where I was going. Oh, so I was at ECU, and I went into computer science, thinking that it was a little different than it was. Computer science is mainly coding and programming. So after a semester or two of that, I decided I was like, I like building. I like the hardware. So I don't want to write software. I want to put together the machines that run the stuff. Work on computers themselves, not sit behind a computer.
Right.
So I changed my projected major because you don't really have a major, first year or two. So I changed my projected major from computer science to industrial technology because it kind of best fit. At the time there weren't any IT degrees. There was industrial technology with a concentration in manufacturing and a concentration in construction management. Right. And then there was computer science, which was coding. So I kind of went the industrial technology route. And then after another year or so, I was into cars. I was coming back, to Kinston to do all my hobbies and hang out with all these friends that were doing the same hobbies. And so I actually enrolled at LCC in the automotive technology program after 2 years of ECU and spent 4 semesters getting a 2 years associate's degree because I didn't need any general college there because all of that transferred in. So all I had to do was take the core LCC automotive classes, which were just in the morning. They were kind of like nursing school. It has these long, like you would sign up for a class and it would be like 7:30 in the morning until like 12:30, like one class. Mm-hmm. But in one semester, you got all of this area done.
Yeah, it's like a ton of credit. Yeah.
So I got my automotive technology degree before I ever finished my ECU degree. So by then I was into the cars, Mustangs, racing Mustangs, just, modifying them, fixing them up, getting one like I wanted it, seeing another one that caught my eye, selling it. So I was kind of into that, and I wanted to start working full time. So my teacher at LCC, Gail Grant, he ran the automotive program out there for years and years and years and years. He hooked me up with the service manager at Evans Ford. It was Evans Ford before it was Sale Ford.
Okay, I got you.
And Earl Harper owned it back then. And so Tommy Sugg, the service manager, my teacher called him and said, "Hey, look, I got this guy that's he's graduated from the program. He's into computers and all this, but he's into cars. He wants to work there. He wants to work at a Ford dealership." And I don't remember if I'd gone and tried to apply and they were like, we don't have anything open. But I'd gone around to a couple of dealerships. I know I'd gone to the GM side of sale, and just asked, if they were hiring. So anyway, he told him, he said, he's looking to work at a Ford dealership. I think you should hire him. Just, if you think you're going to need anybody anytime soon, hire him. So anyway, that's how the conversation went. Because I got a call, like cold call from him saying, "Hey, I want you to come in and talk to me." Like 2 days later, I started working there in the service department. So I worked there almost 10 years. Started back doing ECU classes, but I worked there almost 10 years in the service department. I was doing mainly like drivability, diagnostic, electrical, electronics work. I did a lot of interior work, airbags. Airbags were really just starting to kind of evolve then. When I got into it, there were driver's airbags, but that's all there were.
I got you.
So as that evolved, I went to a lot of Ford schools in Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Charlotte, Richmond. So within a few years, I was a master Ford technician and had my ASE master technician, which is a generalized. So after about probably, close to 10 years in there, I had met my wife. We were dating and was getting ready to get married. So it was 2003. I had met Dana. We had dated a few years. We were getting married. I was getting ready to turn 30. And I was like, I cannot work in an automotive shop the rest of my life. It's, body-wise. I'd already had a hernia, had to have surgery, just the wear and tear. And so by then, the whole IT industry had changed. It had evolved. Yeah. I mean, I remember, in the 90s when I was working at the dealership, I would do the computers for the dealership, and I would have these friends that had moved on, gone to school, like, state, and got IT jobs in Raleigh, Charlotte, out of state, and they were doing these things that I wanted to do, but I really didn't want to move. So I had to wait until the industry evolved here to get into it. So 2003 rolls around. I'm getting married. Just getting nervous that I don't want to work in the heat and the cold in the shop. So I enjoyed the work I was doing on cars. I wasn't having to do like all the dirty stuff, but still, I wanted the technology of IT was evolving to the point that I wanted to get into it, and I really didn't know how to jump off into that. I hadn't finished my career or my degree at ECU yet. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to buckle down and finish that just to get that industrial technology degree so I can apply somewhere. And so an ad came up. Actually, my dad saw it in the newspaper, a company called Affordable Care, who was the management company, kind of the back end for Affordable Dentures brand, which had dental offices all over the place. It was founded in Kinston. Mm-hmm. So my dad found an ad for an IT position in the newspaper and cut it out and gave it to me. And I was like, Well, I had a friend that had worked at the dealership on the service side. He was a service advisor, Jim Presley. He had gone to work for them as a dental recruiter. as a lab recruiter, and I never really understood exactly what they did. I was like, how is he leaving this job and going to work to like be a recruiter for dentists and lab people and all? So anyway, I called him and talked to him about it. He's like, yeah, we got a pretty good IT department here. Yeah, I know, the guy that runs it, he's pretty cool and all. I was like, well, look, if I apply, will you hand deliver my resume to him? Because he's going to see that for almost 10 years I've been working at a car dealership, doing all these, side computer projects. I mean, I did a lot of stuff. I did some stuff for some nonprofits like Red Cross, stuff like that, helping them out. So I could put it on my resume as like, I did this project for this. I was kind of selling computers myself. That was back when it was really better to hand piece together the components of a computer. We call them white boxes. So it was like you buy an empty case, you buy a motherboard, you buy a processor, you buy RAM, put a hard drive in it, put the operating system on it. And so, I could convince people that instead of going to Best Buy or Walmart and buying like a Compaq or Hewlett Packard or whatever, let me build you a computer for about the same price. And it's going to be, in my mind, it's going to be better. And we can always, upgrade it and this and that. So I was doing that on the side a lot. So anyway, I was like, just hand deliver this resume because he's going to see this. See, I've been working at a dealership in a service department for 10 years and just throw it in the trash. So I got a phone call, went in and interviewed. I think I spent like 2 hours in the first interview. And we just really hit it off. So I was hired there. And so that started my official IT career. About a couple of years later, I did finish my degree at ECU. By the time I graduated, they had a concentration in it was industrial technology with a concentration in computer networking. Okay. But I had so much stuff already towards the industrial technology with manufacturing side that I really did a hybrid. My advisor at the time was like, look, go ahead and finish it out doing these IT-based courses, but you'll still have the concentration in manufacturing because, you had more geared towards that. But, it's still the same type degree.
All work the same, yeah.
So I spent almost 13 years, I believe, at Affordable Care. I was hired when the company was opening the 100th dental practice. It was basically an expansion of the IT department to support 100 dental facilities all over the country. Right. I think we were in, I want to say we'd just broken maybe 20 states at the time, 20 different states, 100 dental practices.
Crazy.
So I started working there in the IT department. Huge change, just like, office khakis, right. Shirt every day, air conditioning.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I started that and really loved it. I mean, I really got into it. And I had the best boss ever, Rob Maloney. He was just very empowering. I'd have ideas of doing something, and he'd ask me like, well, have you ever done that before? And I'm like, no, but I got people that have done it before that can kind of like, I can lean on, and I've, right. He's like, well, do it, And so it was that kind of environment.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So I was able to kind of come up through the reins there pretty quick. Ended up managing the department for the last 4 or 5 years that I was there. We grew from 100 dental practices. I think when I left, we were somewhere around 230 to 240, and we were in 43 states maybe.
Dang.
So that was huge. I mean, that was big growth career-wise because we were having to manage, with 200 plus dental offices that each had, anywhere between 5 and 10 computers. We're starting to implement digital X-ray machines that had to talk to our network, and just learning how to support this stuff remotely. When I started at Affordable Care, the dental practices would, in order for us to do anything to their computers, they would have to dial into our modem bank. So we had like 40 phone lines basically that came into a rack, and there was like 40 modems in these 2 racks.
That's wild.
And they would dial in, and it would hit a phone number, and it would, if that was busy, it would just roll to the other. So they had one phone number that the computer would dial in. It would just roll over to the next available line. Then we could remote into the computer, do what we needed to do. So if there was a support call, we had to get them to dial into us. We'd do whatever we needed to do. We wrote little batch programs and stuff that would make them automatically dial up and transfer the dental data for the day to us and stuff. So one of the first big projects there was just what we now call a WAN, a wide area network. So it was, I mean, I was there from the ground up, like figuring out how do we get these dental practices connected to us all the time, 24/7.
Yeah.
So we were having to do, and a lot of these practices were in rural areas. So you couldn't always get, a nice fast connection. You couldn't get fiber,
Right, yeah. So
we were having to do like a hodgepodge of DSL and cable and some wireless ISPs just to get all these practices connected. I helped spec out a VPN platform that would allow them to be connected to our network all the time. So there was a lot of stuff like that was new in the industry at the time that I was exposed to coming up. So I think that really helped build my career and help create the areas of that I kind of think I specialize in.
Yeah, that you kind of like branch off into. Yeah. They become little niches. Yeah, for sure.
So I guess by probably the 2010s, 2011 range. Well, before that, a little before that, I was introduced to Stephen Hill through one of the family members from Affordable Care, and so Stephen and I became friends. We'd hang out a little bit. The brewery had just opened, and so a few years into that friendship, it was thrown around a little bit about me possibly, doing something different career-wise with, or not career-wise, but job-wise. Mm-hmm. And I was scared to leave or make a jump or anything. Well, Affordable Care started kind of moving towards with the CEO change. Our CEO retired, and there was one, and then there was another, and then all of a sudden part of my job was to build out a new corporate office in Raleigh. So you can see where that's going.
Yep.
So I got to go build out a new data center in Raleigh, really nice and call center. We had back in the heyday of Affordable Care, we had the building on Highway 70 that's beside Cummins Plastic Surgery. Mm-hmm. And then we had probably 7,000 or 8,000 square feet of office space upstairs at Vernon Park Mall.
Jeez.
So we were probably one of the biggest tenants. I know we were the biggest business tenant that wasn't a retail store at the mall. So we had our real estate department, our marketing department, and our purchasing department had all outgrown our Highway 70 building and moved to the mall.
Interesting.
And we had built out a call center there. Mm-hmm. Since we were a national brand, we had a 1-800 denture call center. And so that was already kind of in place when I started with Affordable Care, but I was able to grow it through a couple of different phone system technologies and stuff. So, that was one of my babies was the call center up at the mall. So one of the last things I did for Affordable Care, one of the things that really set it in my mind that it's okay to go somewhere else and do something else a little different. Was I had to build out a call center in Raleigh.
Yeah, it's time.
So thankfully, by then, through my friendship with Stephen, I was hanging out with him and Stuart Lindley, and even Stephen's son-in-law, Trey. He wasn't married to Abby yet, but they were dating, and so we were all hanging out. We would run together. We used to run a lot. And so finally it came up, hey, would you like to come kind of take over the IT infrastructure at Discovery Insurance? And, along with that comes all the other fun stuff that Stephen's doing, the brewery. And, the Motor Lodge wasn't around yet. The O'Neill was it was in construction stages of getting the building ready to be built out.
Gotcha. Yeah. How long of a project was that?
Probably about 2 years. Probably about
pretty
2 years.
fast.
It was probably, I think it was a good 2 years. Yeah,
that's pretty good. I'm at 3 on this one. Pretty close.
Well, there was
half the floors.
There was a lot more people working on it.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, that's sweet though.
So in 2014, I actually started doing some contract work for Discovery just to kind of get in there, and their IT needs. So Discovery is a little different than what we were at Affordable Care. So at Affordable Care, we had a sizable IT department. I think at its peak I had maybe 7 employees in the department, and we supported the dental offices all over the place. Mm-hmm. But the software we used was kind of off the shelf. It was a application. The main dental application was called Dentrix, and I've my dentist office uses it. You know,
Yeah.
so it's an application that
really
most
fast.
dentist offices use. But us being specialized in the denture and implant industry, what we would do is about every 4 to 5 years through a product life cycle of their software, we would go through a customization phase. And so we would get with them and get them to take their current version and then highly customize it for us. Like we had our own affordable care, affordable dentures version of Dentrix, but we only did this every like 4 or 5 years. So we didn't do any software development in house.
Right.
So we would install it and we would support it, but Dentrix really supported it. You know? If there was a problem with an application, it wasn't on us. It was just on us to get the platform, the computer, the server, or whatever running to run it on. So anyway, with Discovery, most of the software is written and maintained in-house, developers in-house, okay? So their infrastructure side, the networking, computers, servers, storage, all of that stuff was kind of being handled by Stephen's family's other business, their IT department, which was pretty sizable. So the idea was to get it separated, just to kind of get Discovery and everything else like, completely away and standing on its own IT-wise.
Right.
So beginning in 2015, I finally made the move and came over full-time working for Stuart at Discovery, Stephen, and spent the first year really just doing what I said, like getting us on our own. I mean, there's certain things in IT that if you're dependent on another organization, that you can't change. There's stuff that you have to start over from scratch. So like building, I mean, for the people that know, Windows domain, you can't change the root domain. So Discovery was a domain off of another domain. And so I had to start over with a root domain at Discovery, figure out how to migrate all the servers, figure out how to migrate mailboxes that were 20 plus years old that had to move from one organization to another. So my first year was doing that migration. And I was before I was hired there, I went through, I was a Microsoft certified system engineer. I have Cisco certifications and all. So it wasn't hard. It was just a lot of meticulous work.
Yeah, tedious stuff.
Yeah, very tedious stuff. So after that was done, by the end of 2015, that was on to more fun things.
Yeah.
So we were by then we were starting to build out the motor lodge. So that was a pretty big project. I got to, I was kind of in on the O'Neill from the beginning, not as a full-time employee standpoint, but Stephen let me design the network there before I really worked for him per se. Kind of did it as a friend thing, like, hey, let's get this right. I mean, because once these walls go up, there's not going to be a lot of changing.
Yeah, when you start calling me to fix it when there's a problem, I want to at least be in on the reason that there's a problem. Yeah. I want to understand it. Yeah.
So by the time the motor lodge came around, I was in that from the ground floor up, and we started doing the Imperial apartment building. Nice. They were both going on at the same time.
Okay.
So that was real fun. There was days. I mean, I had all the stuff going on at Discovery. Had all this stuff at the Motor Lodge and the Imperial going on. I mean, it was some long hours, but it was fun. I mean, it really was fun. So another little side thing that I got into about the same time was in 20. I think it might have been the summer of 2015. It was either it was 15. With the rental houses that Stephen has, with the Smart Kinston, the Arts District houses, we hosted a program called Teach for America. Okay. And it's a summer program for newly graduated teachers where they, I think it's some kind of contract deal where part or all of their school's paid for if they go into this program and they served 2 years teaching like in these underpopulated, underprivileged areas or something. So anyway, their orientation is the summer after they graduate from college. So we were hosting, I think that first year, it was 23 or 24 students in, I think it was a total of like 12, or it was like somewhere between 12 and 14 of the houses back here in the Mitchelltown neighborhood. Well, I knew about it. I knew they were coming, and we had our contractor at the time, Jonathan Hughes. He and I, we were around each other a lot with some of the other projects going on, and I knew that they had to provide them the basic necessities, electricity, running water, a bed, a dresser, a desk. Mm-hmm. Well, he comes up to me a week before they move in and says, "Man, I got something to tell you." I was like, "What?" He said, "We didn't really read it in the contract at first, but all these teachers moving in these houses have to have internet."
Yes.
And I said, "Okay." I was like, "When do they move in?" He said, "Next Friday."
Yes. Good. So, this is like wired, like networking a whole neighborhood.
So I was like, wow. Wow. Okay. So, and they were only going to be here for, I don't know, 7-8 weeks or something like that.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So anyway, that was fun. I mean, it really was. That's what I'm saying. I love being under the gun like that. So for the next week and a half, I figured out I was already leveraging some of the technology, especially when we built out the O'Neill with what they call fixed wireless, where you basically use 2 radios that are attached to buildings, and you do a wireless link between them. Mm-hmm. And it's like a hybrid between what most people would consider Wi-Fi. It doesn't really work like that. The technology underlying works more like cellular telephones. It uses time division. So it uses like time slots to serve the different stations. So people think it's like Wi-Fi, but it's really not. But so anyway, so basically in a week and a half, I was able to order equipment like next day air and lay up this network back there in Mitchelltown using some underground Ethernet cables, some point-to-point fixed wireless, and by the time they moved in, I had them lit up. So
it's just like that whole little region over there just kind of has like a wireless signal to it.
Well, no, I mean, some of the houses we were renting trenchers from Lester's Hardware and trenching in like gel filled direct burial Ethernet cable, just whatever made sense to make to the next house that we had to get to.
Right. That's cool.
So after that, I came up with this idea to where I told Stephen, I was like, well, what if, and I was feeding everything off the top of the O'Neill because that was the highest point that he owned that I had access to. So the main radio with the circuit was coming in there and then coming down to different points and then going underground and cables and stuff where it needed to.
Gotcha.
So I was like, well, what if, so by then I was we were running Ginger 108 restaurant, the Red Room. We had the Motor Lodge was being built out. The Imperial building was being built out. Had the O'Neill, the brewery, a couple other things I'm forgetting, I'm sure. But I said, what if, and I was having to manage all these accounts. So like Ginger 108 and the Red Room had opened right before I was on full time. One of them had cable for internet. One of them had DSL. They're just set up like these ad hoc accounts. Yeah,
everything's
so
right.
But now that I'm running, the IT side of things, they were my circuits. So I had to manage them. I had to, approve all the invoicing, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I was like, what if I can do all of this, and I'll just start another little company. And I'll provide the internet for this is me talking to Stephen. I'll provide internet for all your businesses at zero profit. And then would you let me do it for a few select other businesses on my own? And so we talked it out. And so I started a little company called SureWave. And so by the next year when the teachers came back, they were good to go.
Ready to rock, yeah.
so I was able to consolidate. And also in that, just internally in the company, I think the day one savings, once we cut all these other circuits off with other providers, I think it was in the $1,200 a month range. Just savings from having these different connections to different buildings.
Yep.
So I got into that, and that's still a little side project that I do. I can provide internet and manage network for downtown, and that's kind of fun, little side job. At least I get to say, hey, I own this, I did this,
right.
But it doesn't take away from my full time job, and it doesn't require a lot of maintenance. Typical little equipment failures, power failures here and there, can cause panics in the middle of the night. but so I don't know. I guess I kind of took and ran with what I'm up to. So here, I'll let you speak.
No, you're good. I love it, dude. I love it. When were you rocking with the drone stuff? Were you ever using those?
I forgot about that.
For buildings and stuff.
So that sparked my interest in, I think it was 2011. I used to get Wired magazine. It was I think it was the very last like paper magazine, that I ever subscribed to. But I got Wired magazine. And one of the issues, front cover, was a picture of a drone, a quadcopter drone. So it was this, cross-shaped thing with 4 helicopter blades on it, about this big. And I was like, "Whoa, what is that?"
I need one of these.
I mean, this was before you could buy them off the shelf,
right?
And so I went to that article, and the guy, his name was Chris. I forget his last name, but he was the editor of Wired magazine, and he had invested in a small startup in San Diego called 3D Robotics, and they were building personal drone parts. So I read that article. It was, it was an article about this company, 3D Robotics, that started up and, we're building these kits. They were selling kits and, parts and stuff for personal drones. And I was like, I'm going to make one of those.
I'm going to need to do that.
Yeah. So for the next year or so, I probably really spent 5 or 6 months before I had anything in the air. But I'd used a lot of their specifications. I used aluminum stock. Aluminum from Lowe's, like drill presses, Dremel tools. I built the airframe. The electronics, 3D Robotics, was selling kits. They would either sell like the flight controllers. They were, I'm not sure if in any of your stuff you've ever come across Arduino as an operating system, that little micro controllers. So they were using Arduino. And they had it was all community. It was an open source, community-based development for the software. And so they had the flight controllers you could buy like pre-made, but the back order list was long on those. Or you could get it where they were like basically the circuit board with all the surface mount components, all of that on it, but none of the headers were soldered in. None of the stuff was like assembled. So, and you could get those like, with a 2-week wait period. So I started getting all the electronics in, like the put together kind, not the pre-assembled. So I was soldering like really small stuff. And so, just testing everything, bench testing stuff, like hooking computer up and, getting the gyros calibrated and all that. I mean, it was fun. And I think after about 6 months, I had one in the air. That's sweet. And so that was kind of a hobby of mine for a good year, probably 2 years. Probably 2 years I was doing that. You'd put model airplane radios in it, like a 6 or 7 channel like model airplane radio in it, and then you'd also have telemetry radios in it where you could hook it into a computer, so you could have a laptop and you could actually do a flight plan on the laptop, and you could manually take it off, and then you could like basically flip a switch on the controller that put the flight controller in automated mode, and then it would talk to the laptop and like execute. The way they termed it would execute a mission. So I mean, you could go out and I joined the there's a model airplane club out there by the airport, by the hospital. So I was a member out there for a couple of years, and I'd go out there and just play around with that. But there's only so many times that you can set like a flight pattern and tell it like go up to this many feet and then go over here and go to this many feet. So it was fun. It was fun while it lasted. Then it seems like after a couple of years, everybody's like DJI had started selling them. And you could buy one off the shelf, and then it just kind of lost its flair there. But the funny thing is, when I was into that, I was making a lot of the parts. So the first like landing legs that I made were made out of metal. And they were a little heavy, but they were also, they would bend on like a hard landing. And, it wasn't, when you see somebody with a drone now, like a DJI Phantom, they take off, it hovers by itself, they fly it around, they come back down, it sits down on the ground. It wasn't really exactly that graceful.
You still had to make it do that.
There were a lot of hard landings.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was always bending legs. So then I started cutting certain parts out of, it's the fiberglass that PC boards, circuit boards are made out of. You can buy it without the copper etching part on it. So I was doing that and like cutting out parts. And so I started getting into 3D printing. And at the time, again, there weren't like off the shelf stuff that you could buy in 2011,
really.
2012.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was, but not for the home, not for the consumer.
5 figures up.
Yeah. So there was a certain 3D printer kit or plans. I can't remember if you could buy the complete kit or if you had to build some of it yourself, but it was called MakerBot.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had like the MakerBot and the MakerBot 2. And I got pretty interested in that. And I was right on the cusp of getting into that when something else kind of caught my eye, and that was Bitcoin mining.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
So then, so probably it was, probably middle to end of 2012, I got the Bitcoin mining bug. Mm-hmm. And, that was all new to me, Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, it had been around for a few years, but I'd never really paid attention to it. So, so back then you could actually do the computational part of the mining on the, at first you can always go back and do it on a CPU. Mm-hmm. It's just with the world's power of all the people doing the mining, if you're this small, you're not going to make any Bitcoin. Right. So you have to be competitive in the churning of all these calculations to mine these blocks for the blockchain. Okay. So when I got into it, it was lucrative to do it with graphics cards like GPUs, mm-hmm. like a video, the card that you would put in a computer to play video games.
Yeah, like a GeForce or whatever. Yeah,
yeah. Yep. So I got into it with that, and I had 2 system boards that would hold 3 video cards. Mm-hmm. So I had like 6 GPUs, like Bitcoin mining for a few months. Well, if you read about Bitcoin mining, as more and more people do it, and as technology increases, there's a thing called a difficulty factor, and it's a numerical value. Well, from the time I started doing the mining until the time I realized I needed to up the game, the difficulty had probably like quadrupled. Mm-hmm. So I was making less and less Bitcoin per day.
Yeah, gotcha.
So then there were these things called ASICs that were coming out. They're application-specific integrated circuits. So whereas like a GPU or a CPU in a computer is a general integrated circuit that can do many different types of things, mm-hmm. An ASIC is a chip that is designed to do a certain type, in this case, a certain type of mathematical calculation, and that's all it can do. You can't do anything
on
else.
Repeat, yeah.
Yep, that's all it can do. But it can do it a lot better than something that has to be general purpose. Mm-hmm. So they were starting to come out with ASICs to do Bitcoin mining. So I started trying to get in on that development of like, and that was basically, they're all being made overseas, China mostly. And so I got in some pre-orders on some early equipment, and some of that stuff ended up like, not delivering on time. And right. So I was able to get into the ASIC game early enough that I had some decent equipment. I was able to mine for probably 3 years before I reached the point of I'm not buying any more equipment, and now my equipment is costing more per day in electricity than I'm making. Right. That's when you pull the plug. I mean, that's the way it works. So I think I mined well into like 2014 with that stuff, and earned, I think it was close to 4 Bitcoin. And I've still got some.
Hell yeah, I was gonna say yeah.
So yeah, I've got Bitcoin, but I never bought any. I mined it all.
Yeah, that's awesome.
At the time, I spent a couple $1,000s here and there on, and I'd sell stuff and buy stuff. Sell older chips, buy newer chips. Yeah. And there was one time when I quit that I was like, I guess I'll probably get my money back out of it. And now I'm like, I'm glad I did it. I can get a lot more money out of it.
Did just fine.
Yeah, I did just fine.
That proved to be a profitable experiment. Yeah.
So
when you're into like 19,000 different things, 1 or 2 of them usually hit eventually.
Yeah.
So.
Well, see, that takes the place of sports. I'm not a sports guy. Yeah. I try not to get all worked up about politics. So
how's that work out? Does that go pretty well from time to time? Just depends.
It did well until more recently, but it will.
Right.
It's a whole other story.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But those I always get these little hobbies that like I get way into, and then ride it out until I've been there, done that, and then I can just step away and say, wow, that was fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of nerdy like that too. I kind of do similar things. I was like getting into cameras and getting into all that equipment. God, that's expensive.
I got into photography pretty big.
Did you?
When Alexis, my firstborn, when she was about a year old, so she was born in 2006. we were carrying her to get her 3-month pictures or 6-month pictures done and all. And so, being a gadget guy, I'm like looking at the photographers. By then the photos were digital by then.
Yep.
When we got married, when Dana and I got married in 2003, we were actually Isaac Hines did our wedding, and he told me later that we were the first wedding he ever did on digital.
Really? Yeah.
So like the wedding before us was on film.
Yeah.
And I know other photographers around here that were still shooting on film after that. So anyway.
Well, those were back in the days where you shot a whole wedding and then got back and then realized you didn't know this one weird thing about the card and it didn't save any of it. And you're like, oh my God, how do I call that lady and tell her I have nothing?
I think I remember. I may be wrong, but I think I remember Isaac telling me that he shot both that day, film and digital.
Just in case, yeah.
But it's safe.
I know we got like dual slots on this camera, and I was like, what do you need like 2 memory cards for? They're $400. Like, I'm never going to buy 2. And they were like, wait till you screw something up.
Wait till one of them doesn't work.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So, I got into photography real big. Around 2007, when Alexis was about a year old, I was like, you know what? I can do this. If these people are doing it, I can do this.
Yeah.
So I buy a camera, I buy a couple of lenses, and then I realize, what I bought is like, okay, there's this out there. Yeah. So then I buy this, and then I'm deep into it. So then I'm like, I'm doing her baby pictures. I'm getting all this stuff ever growing up. Dance pictures. I did dance pictures for some other people. Set up a studio in my garage, lights, and, the roll down sheet of paper and all. Yeah. So a friend of mine that lives in Greenville, he was doing photography as a side job too. And he started doing weddings. Mm-hmm. He was like, well, I was just telling him, like, man, I want to get this and this and this, but I can't justify it,
Right.
Like, I want it, but I can't. He's like, well, why don't you come start shooting some weddings with me? And ambulance.
Yeah. It's just another...
So
the dogs love them.
So for like 3 years, I think it was about 3 years, I went and did, like, I was the second shooter on weddings with him, and made pretty decent money for doing that. It was a lot of work. Occupied a lot of weekends, but it allowed me to really buy some good camera equipment. Mm-hmm. And so I did that, and by the time Anna Kate was born, 3 years later, I was almost like burnt out on photography.
I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah.
I mean, I still did both the kids' pictures for a long time, really until cell phones got so good.
Yeah, but, that's the other thing.
Yeah, I've still got a Canon 5D Mark II full frame camera that I bought, I think, brand new in 2010 for way more than I should have. I have never sold that camera, but I've bought and sold many cameras, a lot of lenses. I had a lot of Canon L lenses.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I've sold all of those. No, I still have one. I still have a 7200 if ever anybody wants one.
That'll be available on Marketplace later today.
So yeah, I've had a photography stint too.
Yeah. That's how I am. I get into all sorts of little things, and I go all the way to like level 1,000. And then when I have once you've achieved, you have all the achievements are 80%, you're like, and something else, and then you jump into that.
Yeah.
My problem is having to go back and then unload that equipment that I have.
Yeah. That's where even with photography, I feel like I messed myself up, because if I'd have stayed at that certain level where I had decent equipment and just, had fun doing it, with the family and the kids and all, I probably wouldn't have gotten to the point of burnout where I was I don't want to have to pick this camera up again.
Yeah, exactly. I did that with I was got really into fishing again. I was like, man, I love this when I was a kid. And then I tried to have a job for a little bit, and then I got back into fishing. And then it was it was like a little Walmart pole. And then it was $100 setup. Right. And then it was $400 setup. So then it was I've got this, now I need a kayak. And then I get a kayak, and then I got to have the sonar on the kayak, and I got 2 little rod holders, so I need another one of those $400 rod combos, because you need to have a matching. And then you go through all this stuff, and you're like, I'm going to be a professional kayak fisherman. And then it was if I had just buttoned down at work a little extra hard, I could probably go on some pretty cool fishing trips outside of Columbus, because there's not a lot of really great places around here to fish. And then I have all this fishing equipment in the back still. To this day.
Yeah.
And probably really, still really good stuff. I take it out every once in a while, I'm like, man, that's just like butter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think really for the photography part of it I was more into the gear than I was the art.
Yeah.
And I still, we go get family pictures made, now, and I'm like, yeah, what they're doing and getting these poses out of us, I would have never been able to do. So
Yeah.
I was just in it for the gear, and so
Yeah, just the nerdy technology stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I know. So that's how I got into this camera. It was like the slippery slope of I was like recording on these other cameras.
yeah. I mean, come on, Zach, you can do a podcast on an iPhone. Why aren't you doing a podcast on an iPhone?
Because I'm an idiot. I have to have cool stuff. So I was using these little cameras. They're like $100, $150, and they do a fantastic job. And by the time you're watching it on your phone anyway, you're not even going to notice that it's not 4K. Right. But I was like, I got to have 4K. And then it was like, I got to have 4K that records for more than 30 minutes. Yeah. And then it was like, this new camera just came out. And I was like, well, that's expensive. And I got it. And then I was like, oh, it doesn't come with a lens. So I bought the lens. And then I bought the other thing. And then I was like, oh, I need a memory card. And then the memory card that works for this type of camera to be able to write in 4K.
Speed.
It's freaking $400. I was like, for a memory card. So yeah, I was like 4 G's down the road. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is stupid. And stuff's like, well, you better really like it.
You need to start putting ads on the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. The ads in the video or the ads in the windows were going way better than the ads on the podcast. But
that's a pretty neat idea.
Appreciate it. Yeah. I was hoping it would work out. Hopefully, eventually, we'll get to 4 of them someday. But we got to 2 pretty quickly, and now we're just kind of chilling. Yeah. But nice. Yeah, it was fun. It's cheaper than putting signage outside the building, actually.
Right.
Believe it or not. Yeah. So, anywho, dude, we actually hit almost every single thing on this list without even having. See, I told you that's how it would go.
It flows.
Yeah, it just flows right on out. What you got? You got anything fun going on this week? You got Alexis is at school still.
Yes, she will be.
How does that work? So, from not understanding, and you maybe explain this to me a little bit. How does one's high school student end up going to school somewhere else the whole year? How'd you get so lucky?
I learned this. I learned this last spring. So, School of Science and Math is where Alexis is at for her junior and senior year. It's a North Carolina public school. It is. They have online options, but then they have what they call residential, which is like full-time boarding. It's basically like going to college for your junior and senior year of high school. Mm-hmm. So she applied, and I think that would have been December of 2011
or 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
I wish it was 2011, dude.
2021.
But like we have our brains.
So April of 22 last year, you find out if you got your first choice, second choice, whatever. So they have residential, they have online, they have what they call Summer Venture, which is just like a summer program. So she got accepted to the full residential Durham program, and I was like. She was like, oh my gosh, I got in. We're like, wow. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, but you're not really going, are you?
Yeah,
like you're not going to leave. You're not going to leave us.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got your driver's license. Actually, no, she found out it was like the week before her 16th birthday. I was like,
wow.
You haven't even got your driver's license yet.
Yeah, you're not going.
And you're talking about moving out of the house, and then next thing's college. You'll never really live here full time again.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, it was very shocking. So she and you only have 72 hours to accept or decline.
So
72 hours.
They're serious about it. Yeah.
So I think there was some other reason that Dana and Alexis were going somewhere I think they were going to Chapel Hill for something that weekend last year when she found out, and they went and rode around the campus in Durham and talked it out or whatever. She came home, she said, I'm going to go.
You're like,
yeah. So the way it works is it is a full-time residential program. They have dorms. It's in Durham. It's the old Watts Hospital campus. They built onto it since then. It started in 86, I want to say. And it's a high school that concentrates on the maths and sciences. Yeah. She moved in August 12th, I think, and they have, since they're a public school, they call them extended weekends, but I think they're really like teacher work days. Mm-hmm. So about every 3 or 4 weeks, they'll have an extended weekend where the dorms close and you have to come home.
Oh, they kick you out, yeah.
They basically kick you out, yeah. So it'll be like either you're out of school on Friday, so by Thursday at 5 p.m. the dorms close, and then you go back Sunday, or you have Monday off and you leave Friday afternoon and you go back during the day on Monday for classes on Tuesday.
Cool.
So, you know, we get to have her home a lot, but you can't have vehicles there.
Yeah.
So even as a senior, if you turn 18, you still can't have a vehicle on campus.
It's kind of a bummer.
They just don't have room.
The
the liability. You're under their care. So they even said in one of the orientation things, I think they directed it to the students, but they're like, even though a child may turn 18 while they're still in school here, we consider them a minor. You know, they're under our rules. So
which basically means we own you.
yeah. But they can, they can check out a campus in groups, like on a buddy system or in groups. They can walk to coffee shops, restaurants during certain hours, which are, daylight. Mm-hmm. They can take public transit. The school has, they have sign-up sheets every once in a while, like for, like a Costco run or something. Like, hey, sign up 4 p.m. on this day if you want. And they have vans, so
that's real cool.
They'll take them. So it's been a pretty neat experience. The only thing I think that she's really driven it into us is that the food's not good.
Right.
Having to all those DoorDash and stuff like that.
That account's been healthy.
Yeah.
That's too funny.
But so she's about to finish her junior year, and she'll have one more year there and then figure out where she wants to go to college.
Nice. She's probably going to graduate high school with like a doctorate already.
No. She thinks she wants to be a dentist right now. Yeah. So, we'll see. She's been interested in pharmacy too.
I think going back, I probably would have been really into pharmacy too. Just kind of cool.
Yeah. She's pretty technical. So,
yeah, but like all the stuff it takes to go through and become a pharmacist is crazy.
Yeah,
like all the, I don't know if like clinicals is the term or not, but like their little like internships and stuff.
Right. A lot. And there's a lot of other areas now, like research pharmacy, and it doesn't mean that you're going to work in a pharmacy.
Yeah, you're not like definitely chilling at Walgreens all day every day.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. I have to talk to a stereo guy or something later, maybe. Hopefully you can't hear that.
And then, so Anna Kate is she's at Parrott, and she's getting ready to be in high school. She's in 8th grade this year. So next year will be the only year that I can say I've got 2 high schoolers, 9th grade and 12th grade.
Yeah.
So, but I have 2 teenagers now. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I always thought it would be a long time before I said that, and it came pretty quick.
Yeah, I know. My youngest is 10, and then we're getting a teenager here in about 5 months.
You just wait.
Dude, I know. We talked about it that day. I was picking up the air hockey, and I was like, yeah. You getting a lot of this? And you getting a lot of this? Yeah, me too.
Yes.
It's too funny. Now we've graduated to the hoodie up, which is cool. You get less of the eye rolls.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But
you just get off center and you can't see the eyes roll.
Yeah, I'm just like, whatever. Yeah, be pissed. In here. Well, cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on here and hanging out and kicking it for the day. We did this one during the day too, which was kind of fun. It was, it's 2:20. We're already pretty much good to go. Thanks for coming over a little early too. That worked out awesome. Yeah. That was perfect. Absolutely. That was perfect. Well, cool, man. Well, appreciate you coming on. If any of you didn't know Jeff, now you know Jeff pretty well. That's it. I learned a lot. I didn't know.
Yeah. Most people just know me probably from the last 10 years of being the IT guy, doing stuff that I do. But,
the internet guy in downtown.
Yeah.
I feel it. Well, cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Again, this was the Kicking It With podcast. We're back after a little hiatus. This was episode 48 with Jeff Laws. I'm Zac Holcomb. Hopefully you can't hear that buzz, and sorry for the dogs barking. We'll catch up with you on episode 49.